6 months ago, I buried my wife. I picked out the casket myself. I chose the white roses because they were her favorite. I stood in the rain and watched them lower her into the ground while my daughter Emma squeezed my hand so hard her little fingernails left marks I could still see the next morning. I remember every detail of that day because I've replayed it 1,000 times since. The way the priest's voice cracked when he said her name. The way my mother-in-law collapsed against my shoulder. The way Emma kept asking when Mommy was coming home. And today, on a Tuesday afternoon in the middle of First National Bank on Maple Street, I saw my dead wife standing in line 3 people ahead of me. My name is Daniel Carter. I'm 34 years old. I work as an architect at a small firm downtown. And until about 45 minutes ago, I thought I understood what my life was. I thought I was a widower. I thought I was a single father raising a 6-year-old girl who still slept with her mother's scarf because it used to smell like her. I thought the worst thing that had ever happened to me was already behind me. I was so wrong. It started like any other Tuesday. I dropped Emma off at school. I told her I loved her. I told her Daddy would pick her up at 3. I drove to the bank to deposit a check from a client because my firm still does things the old-fashioned way sometimes. I was thinking about lunch. I was thinking about whether I should finally clean out Sarah's closet this weekend, the way my therapist kept gently suggesting. I was thinking about absolutely nothing important. And then I looked up. She was wearing a navy blue coat I didn't recognize. Her hair was shorter, darker, cut into a sharp bob that fell just below her jaw, not the long honey-colored waves I used to wrap around my fingers in bed on Sunday mornings. She was wearing sunglasses indoors, which Sarah would never do because she thought it looked pretentious. She was holding a leather handbag I'd never seen before in my life. But it was her. I knew it the way you know the shape of your own hands. I knew it from the curve of her neck, the way she shifted her weight to her left foot when she was bored, the small mole just behind her right ear that I used to kiss when she pretended to be annoyed with me. I knew it from the way she tilted her head when the teller called her forward, that exact half-inch tilt that meant she was paying attention but didn't want to seem too eager. My legs stopped working. I want to be honest about that. I didn't run to her. I didn't shout. I didn't do any of the things a man is supposed to do when he sees a ghost. I just stood there in line at First National Bank, holding a check for $4,600, and I watched my dead wife slide a slip of paper across the counter and smile at the teller like she'd done it 100 times before. The teller called her Mrs. Whitman. Whitman, not Carter. Whitman. I felt the floor tilt. Not metaphorically. The actual physical floor of the bank seemed to slide 6 inches to the left, and I had to grab the velvet rope to keep from going down. The woman behind me asked if I was okay. I couldn't answer her. I couldn't make my mouth form words because my mouth was busy trying not to throw up. Sarah, or the woman who was wearing Sarah's body, finished her transaction. She took her receipt. She thanked the teller by name. Ashley. She said, "Thanks, Ashley. Have a great one." And then she turned to leave, and for one terrible, perfect, impossible second, her eyes passed over mine. She didn't recognize me. There was no flicker, no widening, no catch of breath, nothing. Her gaze swept across my face the way you'd look at a stranger you'd never see again. And then she kept walking. She walked right past me. I could have reached out and touched her sleeve. I could smell her perfume, and it wasn't her perfume. Sarah wore something soft, something like vanilla and old books. This woman smelled like jasmine, and something sharp underneath it. But it was her face, it was her body, it was her. I left the line. I left the check on the counter. I left my dignity and my reason and probably a small piece of my soul somewhere on the marble floor of that bank, and I followed her out into the parking lot. She got into a black SUV, a Lexus. We owned a Honda. We always owned Hondas because Sarah said luxury cars were a waste of money for people who weren't actually rich. She got into the driver's seat of a $60,000 SUV, and she pulled out her phone, and she laughed at something on the screen. And I watched her laugh, and I felt something inside my chest break in a way I cannot describe to you. I wrote down her license plate. My hands were shaking so badly I had to write it 3 times. Then she drove away, and I stood in the parking lot of First National Bank for I don't know how long, just staring at the empty space where her car had been. I want to tell you what I did next, but first I need you to understand what we had. Sarah and I met in college. We were 20 years old. She was studying journalism. I was studying architecture, and we met because I spilled coffee on her in the library and she didn't yell at me. She just laughed and said I owed her a new sweater. I bought her one that weekend. She wore it on our first date. She still had it in her closet the day she died. It was the ugliest sweater I've ever seen in my life, mustard yellow with little brown buttons, and she kept it for 14 years because she said it was the sweater that gave her me. We got married when we were 24. We had Emma when we were 28. We had a small house in the suburbs and a mortgage we hated and inside jokes that nobody else would ever understand. We were happy. I know everybody says that about their dead wives, but I swear to you, we were happy. We had problems, like everyone has problems. She worked too much. I forgot anniversaries. We argued about money and her mother and whether Emma should go to private school. But we were happy. And then 6 months ago, on a Thursday morning, 2 police officers came to my office and told me Sarah had been in a car accident on the interstate. They told me she had been driving home from a work conference in Denver. They told me her car had gone off the road and into a ravine. They told me there had been a fire. They told me the identification had been made through dental records because the body was too badly burned for a visual ID. Dental records. I sat in a conference room with 2 strangers and I cried until I couldn't breathe. And then I drove home and I held my 5-year-old daughter and I told her that mommy wasn't coming back. And I have spent every single day since then trying to figure out how to keep living in a world that didn't have Sarah Carter in it. But Sarah Carter just walked out of First National Bank. I drove home in a daze. I almost ran a red light on Cedar Avenue. I picked Emma up from school and I smiled at her and I asked her about her day and she told me about a boy named Thomas who ate a crayon, and I laughed at all the right moments. And inside my head a voice was screaming so loudly I'm amazed she couldn't hear it. That night, after Emma went to bed, I sat at the kitchen table with a glass of whiskey and my laptop, and I started searching. I searched the license plate first. I have a friend, Marcus, who used to work for the DMV before he switched to insurance. I called him and I lied. I told him I needed to know who owned the car. I gave him the plate number and I waited. He called me back in 20 minutes. The car was registered to a woman named Rebecca Whitman. Address on Brennan Hill, which if you know my town is the wealthy part. The expensive part, the part where the houses have gates and the driveways have stone lions. Rebecca Whitman, age 33, no criminal record, married to a man named Gregory Whitman, who, according to a 5-second Google search, was a venture capitalist worth somewhere in the neighborhood of $40 million. Rebecca Whitman, I stared at that name on my laptop screen and I tried to feel something other than nausea. I failed. I poured another glass of whiskey and I started looking for photos. There weren't many, whoever Rebecca Whitman was. She was careful about her online presence. But I found one, a charity gala from about 3 months ago. She was in a black dress. She was holding a champagne flute. She was smiling at the camera with her arm around her husband's waist. It was Sarah. It was my wife. It was the woman I buried 6 months ago, smiling at a camera, alive and rich, and married to somebody else 3 months after her funeral. I think I sat at that kitchen table until almost 4 in the morning. I think I cried at some point, but I don't remember it clearly. What I remember is the slow, terrible understanding that started to crawl through my head as the night went on. Because here's the thing about my marriage to Sarah that I haven't told you yet. 6 weeks before she died, Sarah took out a life insurance policy, a big one, $2.5 million. She said it was responsible. She said with Emma getting older, we needed to think about the future. She said her company offered a discount through a partner provider, and it would be foolish not to take advantage of it. I signed the papers without reading them carefully. I trusted her. Why wouldn't I trust her? She was my wife. When she died, that policy paid out to me and Emma. The money has been sitting in a trust account, mostly untouched. I haven't wanted to spend it. It felt like blood money. It felt like the universe trying to compensate me for something that could never be compensated. But now I was sitting at my kitchen table at 4 in the morning and I was doing math. $2.5 million in insurance, $40 million venture capitalist husband, a body burned beyond visual recognition, a dental record identification, which I now understood from a frantic Google search, could be faked or falsified more easily than I'd ever imagined. A funeral I had paid for, a grave I had visited every single Sunday for 6 months, bringing white roses because I thought my wife was underneath it. There was somebody in that grave. I knew there was, but I was starting to understand, with a clarity that felt like ice water sliding down my spine, that whoever it was, it probably wasn't Sarah. I didn't sleep. I made coffee at 5:30. I made Emma her breakfast at 7. I dropped her off at school at 8. I called my office and I told them I had a family emergency and I wouldn't be in for the rest of the week. Then I drove to Brennan Hill. The house was exactly what you'd expect. 3 stories, white stone, gated driveway, the whole package. I parked across the street and one house down where I could see the front gate, but where I wouldn't be obvious. I sat in my car and I waited. I didn't know what I was waiting for. I just knew I had to see her again. I had to be sure. At 10:15, the gate opened. The black Lexus pulled out. She was driving. I followed her. She drove to a coffee shop in a part of town I rarely visited. She parked. She went inside. She ordered something at the counter, and then she sat down at a table by the window, and she waited. A man joined her about 10 minutes later. He was tall, dark hair, expensive coat. He kissed her on the cheek when he sat down. They ordered food. They talked for almost an hour. I sat in my car across the street, and I watched them through the window like the world's most pathetic private investigator. And I tried to figure out what I was looking at. She was laughing. She was animated. She was using her hands the way Sarah always used her hands when she was telling a story. This specific flutter she did with her left wrist when she got to the good part. She reached across the table and put her hand on the man's hand at one point, and he turned his palm over and laced his fingers through hers. And I watched my dead wife hold hands with a stranger in a coffee shop in broad daylight, and something inside me died that hadn't died at her funeral. When they got up to leave, I made a decision that I'm still not sure was the right one. I got out of my car. I crossed the street, and as she walked out of the coffee shop, I stepped directly into her path, and I said her name, Sarah. For one full second, her face was completely blank, completely empty, and then she did something I will never forget for as long as I live. She smiled, polite, pleasant, the smile you give a stranger who has mistaken you for somebody else. "I'm sorry," she said. "I think you have the wrong person." Her voice, it was her voice. It was the voice that had whispered to me in the dark for 14 years. It was the voice that had sung Emma to sleep. It was the voice I had heard apologize to me through tears, laugh at my terrible jokes, tell me she loved me 1,000 times. "Sarah," I said again. My own voice was breaking. "Sarah, it's me. It's Daniel." The man with her, the man whose hand she had been holding, stepped forward and put himself slightly between us. "Sir," he said, "she said you have the wrong person. Please step back." I looked at him. I looked at her. I looked at the small, almost invisible flicker behind her eyes that I had been married to for long enough to recognize even when she didn't want me to see it. It was fear. Pure, naked fear. She knew exactly who I was. She knew exactly what I was doing there, and she was terrified. "Emma," I said, quietly, just loud enough for her to hear. "Emma still sleeps with your scarf." She flinched. It was small, barely visible, but I saw it, and so did the man next to her, because his hand tightened around her elbow in a way that wasn't gentle. "We need to go," he said to her. Not to me, to her. She didn't say anything. She let him steer her past me. She let him walk her to a different car than the one she'd arrived in. She got into the passenger seat, and as the car pulled away, she looked at me through the window, just once, and her mouth formed a word I have spent every minute since then trying to understand. I think she said run. I'm sitting in my car right now in the parking lot of an empty grocery store, recording this on my phone. Emma is at school. I have 3 hours before I have to pick her up. I don't know what to do. I don't know who that man was. I don't know how my wife is alive. I don't know if she left because she wanted to or because somebody made her. I don't know if the woman in that grave was killed because she looked enough like Sarah to fool the dental records, or if she was just an unlucky accident that somebody used. I don't know if my wife is a victim or a criminal or both. I don't know if she's been thinking about me and Emma for 6 months or if she stopped thinking about us the day she drove away. But I know one thing. She said run. She didn't say help. She didn't say save me. She said run. And whoever she has become in the last 6 months, whoever she has done or had done to her, my wife just used the last second she had to warn me about something. I have to go get my daughter. I have to figure out what to do next. I don't know if I should go to the police. I don't know if I should pack a bag. I don't know if the man in the coffee shop saw my license plate or if he's already making a phone call to somebody about the strange man who knew his wife's old name. I just know that 6 months ago I buried my wife, and today she told me to run. So tell me, if you were me, what would you do?